The lock clicked behind us. At first, I thought it was an accident. Emily, I called up the stairs. No answer, just the muffled sound of laughter, music, and glasses clinking from the living room above us. My sister's engagement party was in full swing, and somehow my grandpa and I had ended up locked in the basement. I tried the door handle again. It didn't move. Emily, I called louder this time. Still nothing. Grandpa sat quietly near the old furnace, resting both hands on his cane. The single light bulb above us flickered, throwing long shadows across the dusty floor and stacked storage boxes. For a moment, I told myself she probably didn't notice we had come downstairs. But then I remembered the look she gave me earlier, that tight smile, the cold whisper she slipped into my ear while everyone was busy congratulating her. You always ruin things. Just stay out of the way tonight. Upstairs, someone started cheering. I pulled my phone out and checked for signal. Nothing. Of course. Thick basement walls. I exhaled slowly and leaned against a stack of old boxes. My sister had always treated Grandpa like he was a problem that needed hiding. Ever since Grandma died, she complained he walked too slow, talked too much, and embarrassed her in front of guests. Tonight, she barely let him finish a sentence. And now we were locked down here while she entertained her guests upstairs like nothing happened. I felt anger rising in my chest, but I pushed it down. Getting angry wouldn't open the door. Minutes passed, then more. The music above us got louder. At one point, Emily's voice carried through the floorboards. And after the wedding, we'll probably sell the house anyway. My stomach tightened. Sell the house. Grandpa had lived here for 40 years. I looked at him. His expression didn't change, but his fingers slowly tightened around his cane. Another round of laughter exploded upstairs. They weren't coming down for us. Not anytime soon. I walked back to the door and tried the handle one more time. Still locked. We might be stuck here for a while. I said, quietly. Grandpa leaned slightly toward me. Come closer, he said softly. I stepped nearer, confused. He glanced toward the ceiling, listening to the party above us, then looked straight into my eyes. Suddenly, he didn't seem old or tired anymore. His voice dropped to a whisper. Quiet. I leaned in. Then he said something that made my heart skip. I have a secret. Your one click can keep these stories alive. Subscribe, because every voice deserves to be heard. The basement grew quieter after that. Not upstairs. The party was still loud. Music, laughter, glasses clinking. Emily's voice kept rising above everyone else like she was the star of the night. But down here, everything felt different. I looked at Grandpa. A secret? I whispered, What do you mean? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he slowly stood up from the chair. For a moment, I instinctively moved to help him, but he waved his hand slightly. I'm not as fragile as they think, he said softly. Then he tapped his cane twice on the concrete floor. A hollow sound echoed back. I frowned. Grandpa moved a few steps toward the old wooden shelf in the corner, the one that had been there for as long as I could remember. It was filled with dusty paint cans, old tools, and boxes no one had touched in years. He pointed at it. Help me move that. I blinked. The shelf. Yes. The music upstairs boomed louder as another round of cheering erupted. Emily must have been making another speech. I grabbed one side of the shelf while Grandpa held the other. It scraped loudly against the concrete floor as we slowly pushed it aside. Behind it, there was a small metal door set into the wall. I stared. What is that? Grandpa gave a faint smile. Something your grandmother and I installed a long time ago. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a tiny key. My eyebrows shot up. You've been carrying that around. For 40 years, he replied calmly. The key turned with a quiet click. Inside the metal compartment were several thick envelopes and a small locked box. I felt my heartbeat pick up. Grandpa carefully lifted one envelope and handed it to me. "Open it." My hands hesitated before tearing the seal. Inside were legal documents, property documents, bank papers. My eyes moved quickly across the page, and then stopped. "Wait," I whispered. "This says—" Grandpa nodded before I could finish. "Yes, the house wasn't in Emily's name. It wasn't even in my name. It was still entirely his. But that wasn't the shocking part." I flipped to the next page. There were business ownership documents, investment accounts, numbers that made my brain freeze. "Grandpa," I said slowly, "this can't be right." He watched my reaction quietly. For years, Emily had told everyone Grandpa had almost nothing left, that the house was the only thing he owned, that selling it after her wedding would help everyone. But the papers in my hands told a completely different story. Grandpa wasn't broke, not even close. Above us, someone shouted, "Speech! Speech!" Emily's voice rang out proudly. Meanwhile, in the basement, she thought she had locked us inside. Grandpa calmly closed the metal compartment again. Then he looked at me and said something that made everything suddenly make sense. I was waiting to see who truly cared about family and who only cared about the house. Upstairs, the celebration continued. But for the first time that night, I realized something. The real surprise of this party hadn't happened yet. Don't miss out on the journey. Subscribe and let's grow, laugh, and learn together. The living room went completely silent. Only minutes earlier, the house had been filled with laughter, music, and Emily proudly talking about selling the house after her wedding. Now everyone was staring at the documents Grandpa had calmly placed on the table. Emily's fiancé read the papers again, his voice suddenly uncertain. This says the house is still fully in your name." Grandpa nodded quietly. "And the investments," the man added, flipping another page, "they're worth far more than the house." Whispers spread through the room. Emily's face turned pale. "But you told us you had almost nothing left," she said weakly. Grandpa looked at her, not with anger, but with calm understanding. "I wanted to see who cared about me," he replied softly, "and who only cared about what I owned." No one spoke after that. The same people who had been celebrating moments earlier now stood in uncomfortable silence. Grandpa gently closed the small lockbox and picked it up. "This house won't be sold," he said simply. Then he looked around the room once more before turning toward the door. I followed him outside into the cool night air. Behind us, the party had completely lost its voice. Grandpa paused on the porch and looked back at the house. Then he said something I knew I would remember for the rest of my life. People often think quiet means weak. He rested his hands on his cane and gave a small, knowing smile. But sometimes the quiet person is simply watching, waiting to see who everyone really is. Because respect is never forced. It is something people realize only when it's too late.